Good evening and welcome to the Thursday, December 19th, 2019 edition of the Auburn Zoning Board of Appeals, the last one for 2019. Do I have a motion to open the meeting?
Motion to open.
Have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So before I begin this evening, is anybody recording at all? Okay, hearing none, seeing none. If you have any type of cell phones or electronic devices, if you can just turn them down to a vibrate position, please, or at least quiet them down. So we have a couple of different hearings tonight, and so the first one is a 7 o'clock p.m. applicant, Impact Fitness, Andrew Lawton, requesting a special permit under section 623 for relief from parking regulations on property located at 314 Washington Street, Auburn, Mass, map 42, parcel 9. That's a continuation from 1017 and 1121. So I'm a member of the gym, so I'm going to recuse myself from this hearing. I'm going to turn it over to my able vice chair, Mr. Marin, and then I'll return for the second hearing. So I'm going to recuse myself at this point, and I'll be back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just a matter of housekeeping with our members, we'll bring our alternate member forward so that we can have a full complement of 5 voting members. So Kately, without objection. Okay, very good. So our first applicant is a continuation. As the chairman had mentioned, applicant Impact Fitness, Andrew Lawton, requesting a special permit under section 6.2.3 for relief from parking regulations for property located at 314 Washington Street, Auburn, Mass. Map 42, parcel 9, and again, this is continued from 10/17/19, again, 11/21/19. Is the applicant present? If you could approach the lectern, so if I could have a motion to open the hearing.
I'll make a motion to open.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. I'm Vito Colonna with Cornerstone Engineering. Here again. Andrew Lawton is here tonight. I couldn't make it at the last meeting. So at the end of last meeting, I know that wasn't overwhelmingly well received last time with the proposal we had, but we have done a few things in the interim, met with a few town staff trying to mitigate a couple of the concerns that you had last time. And also as an update, we did have a conservation decision. I think you remember last time we had parking both in the front and in the rear, and that rear portion did get denied through conservation. So we are limited now, where the only possible expansion would be up in that front area where we would need relief from your board to be within 10 feet of the property line. So in the interim, we've also met with Bill Coyle and to kind of go over his concerns. I think he had some, basically in the letter he had issued to the board last time. I'm trying to find a spot for this. The main concern he had was a safety concern with the intersection. And his concern was the vehicles in this new lot here, as they're leaving, if they were trying to make a left-hand turn and there was a kind of a backup there, there may be a conflict with a vehicle coming into the site. And so his main concern was to have this be entrance only in that location. And so we agreed with him to do that. So we revised the plan so that's an entrance only. So that addresses all his safety concerns for the area. And then going over the operational functionality of it with the owners on a daily basis, they do need to have a second exit out of the site. Having only the one exit onto Millbury Street would really limit kind of the site operations, because as you know, this gets busy and basically you'd get one vehicle out per light cycle during the peak time, so you'd have a backup here. So to address that, we did add a second exit, but we separated as far as possible from the entrance to give more time between those, and we put it down in that lower portion of the site. So it would be a right turn only exit, same as it is today, except it's actually more defined. It would make that right turn out a little stronger. Right now it is a right turn only, but you can make a left there. And it would also push that exit further from the merge between the two lanes. So overall, the entrance-exit configuration now would be an improvement for safety throughout the site. Then the other concern, there was some concerns about the visual impacts, I think up in the front, headlight, possible conflicts with those on Route 20. And so what we're proposing is a 4-foot fence, a screening fence, along the frontage right in there. And it would be a solid, privacy fence, just to basically block those headlights along that frontage. And that was also talked about briefly with Bill. One other item that we're looking at on there would be provide some low shrubbery maybe in front of that fence, just try to break it up. And the only thing with that is that would be subject to DOT review. In the past, they've been fine with that as long as you agree to provide all the maintenance in the future of it. So I don't see that being an issue, but it would be subject to their review, putting some landscaping right in front of that. There are 2 very large existing trees out there, so there's already some vegetation out in the front to kind of break it up, and you just have the fence along the front. So those are really the 2 kind of items that we've added there, the safety issue and then the aesthetics issue up in the front.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to ask, before I open it up to members of the board, are there any abutters here to speak on this hearing? Okay. All right, I think I'll just start over here with Mr. Cussy.
My question would be is how are you going to plow along that wall that you're going to put in the fence?
Yeah, right in here.
Yes.
You'd have to push it, down this way or down that way. And having the fence there, that was one of the other things too, is they were concerned about plowing onto the Washington Street Route 20 layout. By putting that fence there, it is more difficult for them to plow it, but it would prevent you from doing that too, because you're going to damage your fence, you have to repair it. So it is more difficult to plow along that edge, but you'd have to push it all the way down one way or the other, because there really is there'd be a wall on the front here and then a fence on the other side. So it is more difficult for them, but it's a trade-off. Yeah, it's a trade-off for, getting more parking.
Mr. Cole?
Hi. How many more spaces does this net out?
Along
For
the
you.
front, you get the 16 spaces along the front.
Yeah?
And then we do have some reconfiguration in the back that would be subject to the site plan approval modification. And if we get those, we go from 74 now to 90. So you'd get, it would just be actually that 16. We lose one here, so we have to make it back.
I'm sorry, I
16.
didn't hear how many
16
more
total.
spaces?
16?
How many more spaces will it net out to?
16.
15?
16.
16.
16, sorry.
if I'm-
That's all I have for right now.
Thank you. Ms. Roach?
So behind those 16 new spots, that would all be one way?
That's correct, yes.
And the entrance to Millbury Street is in and out? And this driveway structure behind the building, that exists right now, right?
That exists, yes.
Okay, so people
Yeah,
who
so if
come in
on
from
here-
Millbury Street can go that way too?
Kind of tough to see. The lighter gray is existing, and it's darker would be proposed.
Okay.
It's just the front that's would be proposed.
And you do have some of the spots designated as small car only, where the spaces are needed, okay. I don't think I have no other questions for me. No.
Ms. Bush?
I don't have any questions.
Okay. I don't have any specific questions from what we've heard. I mean, I think that 16 new spaces based on when you've configured it, a 4-foot fence, it's certainly taken it back to the first proposal that you had had. Caleb, do you have any comments on this application from a DCG perspective?
Just a couple questions to the chair. Is there a conservation filing planned for the new exit? It falls within the 100-foot buffer zone?
Yeah, that would have to file with them for. That one I would think should be okay with them because it's outside the no-touch buffers and it's within a previously disturbed area. So I'd be fairly confident that that should be able to get through. But we would definitely have to file with them.
Did you have another question, Caleb?
No, just a couple points. So they would need conservation approval and DOT approval in order to move forward with the plan. So it may be a little bit out of order if they're getting zoning approval. There would be a lot of contingencies with an approval tonight.
Okay.
That's my only comments.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, I did speak to Bill Coyle, and he's okay with the fence, and he feels that the flow works better this way, but he did say that DOT and Concom they would need approvals from both those.
Okay. That's really helpful. Thanks for bringing that forward. So I'll just bring it back to the board. Any additional comments or questions, Mr. Cussy?
I have none.
Mr. Colo?
No.
Ms. Roach?
Nope.
Ms. Bush? Okay. Any other comments from the applicant that you'd like to share?
No, just the only thing on the two approvals, we just felt to come here first to get your opinions first, just because through conservation and DOT, there may be a higher level of, drainage analysis and, cost incurred from our end, so we felt coming to you first would be more appropriate, that's all. And having those as a condition of approval would be more than acceptable to us.
Thank you for that. Okay, anything else for the open public hearing? All right, I'll take a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion to close.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we have an opportunity to make a motion for discussion or further discussion on this application. Given that there were no second-round questions from the board, does anyone have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve with the conditions that they obtain approval from Conservation and DOT.
Okay.
Second.
All right, motion's been made and seconded, so I'll go around for a vote. Mr. Cussy? Ms. Bush? And the chair will grant. And so with that, we'll just add standard conditions, but also the condition that it goes through those two authorities for additional inspection.
Yeah, the only additional condition I would recommend is constructed as per the plan approved by the planning board.
Okay, and so ordered as stated. So we'll add those for conditions. All right, well, congratulations and good luck on your next phase.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Good luck, thanks.
Okay, we'll just take a moment and we'll welcome the chairman back for our second hearing.
I'm stepping up on Johnny Carson's stage here. Nice.
Yeah.
Well done.
Thank you, sir.
It would seem like that should have been.
So before we begin the second hearing, we have yet another member that needs to recuse herself from this hearing. Do you want to provide any insight on that, Ms. Roach, or?
Yeah, I think I'm just conflicted out because of some of the legal issues our office provided information on, so I need to step down on this one.
Great, I appreciate your honesty. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so again, as the vice chair had mentioned in the last hearing, for our protocols, we'll be bringing up Caitlin Bush as our alternate. She will be weighing in, hearing, and voting on this particular hearing. Do I have a motion to open the 7:10 hearing?
Motion open. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So the applicant, Lynn Beauregard, requesting a variance under section 5.4 of the zoning bylaws to provide relief from the required 20-foot front yard setback for property located at 15 Ward Street, Auburn, Mass., map 13, parcel 140, and this is a continuation from the 11/21/19 hearing. Is the applicant present? If you could approach the lectern, please, ma'am, and bring us up to date on where your project is.
Yes, I'm the spokesman for the group.
Good evening.
What's that?
I said good evening.
We submitted more paperwork. We submitted more paperwork for you to review. I hope you have all of that. Some of the things that I included in that were the 100-foot frontage. I have some pictures there of where my property line goes, just to show how the property is set up. There's a stake in the ground there, and one of the pictures looks like it's in the front yard of my neighbor. The line goes off at an angle where the corner of his porch is about 11 feet from my driveway. I present that as information of why we want to be on the other side of the house. We're so close to him. I mean, I could expand my driveway and put it in his front yard. Right now, I have a trailer, and the trailer often is in his front yard, and it's not a good situation. I feel bad for him, but we don't have any place else to put it. Some of the things that I mentioned is, we have a small driveway there. There are 3 cars, 4 drivers. We often park on the street. The street, I measured it, is 16 feet wide, Ward Street. So it's not a very big street. So if you park on the street, there's not much room to go by. There's a house right across the street from us. When we park in the front of our house and they back out of their driveway, it's very difficult for them to get by our car. Some of the other things that I wrote down was things that we discussed last time, that the Earl Street was put in there as a paper street in 1904. It's a 40-foot wide easement, and I described how far the other house is from that easement. My house is 21 feet from the 40-foot easement. You have the 40-foot easement, and then 55 feet to his house. And I was describing how far that is. So we see that, we're not coming right up against somebody else's house on the other side. Again, we're asking that, the unlikelihood that the paper street would ever be a street, that we get a variance for 10 feet from the paper street rather than 20 feet from the paper street, which is the regulation. Some of the other things I put in there is the work that we've already done. I think if you see one of the pictures, I dug the walkway in the front. You can see there's a hole there. I took down the deck. I moved some loam off of our property and put it someplace on our property, just spread it someplace else. The E on this is the town lawyer. If you go through his points, I think a lot of them support using the paper road and making modifications to it and so forth. He cited a number of things where you can, abutters have the right to change that. And the only thing that he put, why he said no, was that it may impede somebody's right to pass and repass. And certainly being 10 feet from that line with my addition wouldn't impede anybody from passing or repass. I listed some other things that I've already done. We've even, in anticipation of doing this, we even refinanced our home and took out $100,000 to begin the project, not thinking that this was going to be a major problem. I'd like to say that, I think if I try to take the perspective of other people. And as the board, I think that it's really important that you protect people in town and make sure nobody's making it difficult for somebody else, building too close, whatever. The parking that you were looking at just now. I don't see how this is going to affect anybody else. I put in there that I think it's going to improve things. It's going to get our cars off the street. It's going to increase the tax bases with an addition. I don't see any drawbacks for anybody, the town, abutters, anybody. I think if you talk to people in general and went and asked somebody, what do you think about this? I don't think they would see any objection to it. Now, I know you have a sense of protecting the town and so forth, and I think that's important. I want you to do that. It just seems so reasonable to me to allow this to happen, and I'm not sure what the objections would be at this point in time.
Okay. So I'll go around then again to Mr. Maron.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have any direct questions for the for the applicant. And I'll reserve some comments for when we close the public hearing, other than to suggest, I do think that the applicant has raised some thoughtful points. I don't, based on the criteria of walking through the criteria for approving a variance, I don't see substantive changes in what we were looking at during the last hearing. And I welcome the board to challenge that, but again, I think he's raised some very thoughtful points, but as far as our criteria for a variance, I don't know that we have a different compelling argument here. But I don't have any direct questions for the applicant at this time.
Okay. Mr. Chicolo.
Excuse me. I would like to reserve comment until I hear the other board members speak, if they have anything to say, hoping that they will raise a point that I have not thought of, and I will also reiterate that I don't haven't changed my thoughts on a variance since the last time we spoke.
Okay. Mr. Cussy?
Yeah. I mean, when they built the house, they obviously stayed 20 feet back from this road, Earl Street, on the plan. So they knew that they needed the 20 feet, and they were held to it. But, so your driveway is going to go down Earl Street, is that correct?
Portion of the driveway.
Yeah, no, full driveway.
Ms. Bush?
I just had a comment, not necessarily a question. So it appears they're looking for a variance, so it's within, I guess, 11 feet from the boundary being the paper street. I don't know, I would have to look to see what our authority is, but if the whole purpose of the setback is from the street is, in my opinion, probably a safety consideration. So if there's no actual street there, I don't see, as long as we have the authority to grant the variance, I don't see why there would be an issue if there's no paper street. And I don't know if there would ever be a construction of a paper street. And from something that one of the board members said at the last meeting, it didn't seem like there would be the construction of an actual street there ever. So that's all I have to say.
Okay. Do we have any abutters present that would like to speak? Sir? Are you an abutter over this hearing? Okay, thank you. So we have no abutters present. Does that change anybody's opinion if I go around the board one more time? In terms of comments or concerns? No?
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. Ms. Costa? No, I may suggest and that I think it might be prudent to just take a look at the elements specifically of granting a variance and walk through them. Because I know in the past, when we've had hearings such as this, I know they're all unique and special, but I know, for one, it's helped me to walk through those steps.
Sure.
And maybe something will gleam there. Because I think Ms. Bush had some thoughtful comments from a safety perspective. But I think litigiously, it'd be a good idea for us to just narrow it to, what is our authority for a variance and not.
Can do that quickly.
I'd be happy to.
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
Page 95 through the chair.
Thank you.
While we do that, if I may, Mr. Chairman, through the chair, so Caleb, any comments from DCG or inspectional services?
No, this isn't anything that would be reviewed prior.
Understood. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so this is the go-to chapter that we always use and we refer to quite often in these meetings. This is, as Caleb mentioned, page 95. It is under section 9.5 for a variance, specifically 9.5.5, and the paragraph does start with mandatory findings. So before the grant of any variance from the requirements of this bylaw, the Board of Appeals must specifically find that, number one is, owing to the circumstances relating to the soil condition, shape, or topography of the land or the structures, and especially affecting such land or structures, but not affecting generally the zoning district in which it is located, a literal enforcement of the provisions of this bylaw would involve substantial hardship, financial or otherwise, and two, that desirable relief may be granted without substantial detriment to the public good and without nullifying or substantially derogating from the intent or purpose of this bylaw.
Could I ask a question?
You may.
Does that mean all three have to be present, or one of those?
So there's been debate amongst the board members. Some of us believe that all those conditions need to be met. Others believe that certain ones can open the door for the remainders. So with that being said,
You've had that discussion before.
we've had this discussion before, yes. And the board respectfully maintains different opinions on that. So with that being said, so we're looking at topography, of the land, the structure, or specifically affecting such land or structure, but not affecting generally the zoning district, which personally I feel that meets that requirement. A literal enforcement of the provisions of this bylaw would involve substantial hardship, financial or otherwise.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, could you just reiterate what you said about the topography?
So this one here is owing to circumstances relating to the soil conditions, shape, or topography of the land or structures, and especially affecting such land or structures, but not affecting generally the zoning district in which it is located.
Now, at that point, you said you were okay with that part?
That's just my opinion. I'm not sharing that. I certainly don't want anybody, members of the board, to feel as though that
Okay.
it's only my own.
And just to help me, what would you say about the topography was the issue? There's no ledge there.
No, so I don't see a topography being really that much of an issue here, obviously. But again, it's owing to land or structures, I think. And again, this is all subject to interpretation. I see this as we're making a decision on a 115 or 20-year-old piece of paper that was never utilized from then to now. That's just my personal opinion. I think, honestly, if that paper road was not here, we wouldn't even be having this discussion, because they would have filed for a standard set of permits, and they would have already been building.
Sure.
But here we are talking about a cart road from a farm that no longer exists, basically.
And I would agree with everything you have just said. However, it does exist. And I think if we went back through all sorts of land court decisions, we would see that many a farm with a cart road that was a legal road, a stone wall or anything like that, okay, has held up situations like this, okay? And the fact is that it exists, and we have been advised by town council to take that into account.
And I absolutely have. Everything that he wrote, I read, and I certainly have. I still don't think we're putting the town or ourselves at risk. Again, this is just my personal opinion as a member of the board, by granting relief in this situation. But again, I have no desire to influence anybody's vote. We're just having a healthy discussion here. You're sharing your point of view, I'm sharing mine, and I welcome the other members of the board to do the same. Please. So,
Yes. Please.
Mr. Chairman, if I may?
You may.
Ms. Cussy, I might have cut you short on a comment earlier before I asked for the variance bylaw to be read. Did you have a point that you wanted to raise?
No, they hashed.
Okay, very good. No worries. No, certainly. Well, Mr. Chairman, if I may, give Ms. Bush an opportunity to jump in.
please.
Sure, so the road is there. I don't believe that, they're not trying to impose upon the road. They're not trying to construct on the road. They're trying to construct within 10 feet of the road that's on paper instead of 20 feet. And I think if we go to the second point, I'm sure you're gonna go there, but it says that we're not derogatory, or we're not deviating at all from the intent of the purpose of the law. I think the intent and purpose of the law is to have a setback from a road for safety purposes. Since there's no actual physical road there, I think we're still within the intent and purpose of the law.
So, Mr. Chairman, for me, and we may, I don't know if the applicant has, we're still in open hearing, so I don't know if the applicant has any additional comments that he'd like to share. We're doing a great deal of board discovery and discussion here, so I might think that unless the applicant has anything else to share, perhaps we should close the public hearing and
Okay.
then continue deliberating.
So do I have a motion to close the public portion of the hearing?
If I
I'm
may.
sorry, do you have anything like to add? I apologize.
Yes. I tried to, Caleb directed me towards what you read, and I tried to address some of those things. I had talked to a lawyer about coming to the meeting. I thought I wanted to handle this ourselves. Lynn has been in town all of her life. Her parents live right down the street. This is a small town. I would think that, I don't think we're asking for anything unreasonable, and I would hope that the board would support us in our project. I guess, Lynn, you want to say anything?
No, he said it.
I guess I'm surprised at all the resistance to this, because, again, I try to take other people's perspective, and I support the town in protecting people's rights and making sure we're not infringing upon anybody's rights or doing anything that's going to be harmful to the community. And I think we tried to cover all of those things and be understanding of that. And I just hope that you can somehow see it fit to support us and help us in dealing with this. Again, I didn't want to bring a lawyer here. I don't want to do it that way. This is...
The reason why we want to put an addition is because we like that street. We like Packagug area, and we want to stay there. It's, we don't want to move. We want to
The kids didn't
better
want
our
to go
house
anywhere.
and the neighborhood. I mean, it just doesn't seem like...
It's unreasonable.
Yeah, it's unreasonable or an issue.
Thank you.
Mr. Cussy,
So
yes,
my
sir.
main concern would be,
You're absolutely sure this road is never going to be used. That's the fact. And this is never going to be upgraded.
It hasn't been used in
I know.
I mean, that's the thing, it's been 105, what is it?
I know.
1904. I mean,
There's no purpose for it. There's
Mr. Chairman, if we
hold
may,
on, I'm
so,
sorry.
yeah, if we
So I
could
can't have you
just,
speak from the audience?
if we could control this a little bit.
Because if,
Let's go ahead and close the public
Yeah.
hearing, if I may, Mr. Chairman, and then we can continue
all
our
right, so
discussion.
can I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Motion to close the public hearing.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Cussis, you can,
Yeah, I just,
No, that's okay.
excuse
the
me.
problem is if this road is ever going to be used, and now you have a property, that's too close to the road, safety concerns come into play, and plus the driveway is going to be on the right-of-way. I mean, that's substantial to me. But if we absolutely know this road will never be used, then it's a different.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question of
You most certainly may ask.
Mr.
Thank you
Moody?
for asking.
Caleb? Who owns that property right now, the property in question? Who owns it?
Great question, by the way.
I don't know who legally owns it, but anybody in that neighborhood has the right to pass over it.
Okay, that town council made perfectly clear that,
Find out who was the actual owner, that would take some work.
and at the risk of putting anybody off until a time down the road, I would want to do it in the right way so that you don't run into problems with it at some point, whether that point is when you're selling the house or whether you're not and living there. But if there is no ownership to that piece of property, okay, and
Through the chair, if I may, let me rephrase it. I wouldn't say there's no ownership. I would say the ownership is so vast and there's so many people that own rights to pass on that road. They would need thousands of people to release their rights to that road to obtain ownership of it.
And are you going back in time to previous owners of houses that are abutting it?
No, I'm going back to houses throughout that neighborhood that have the right to pass over that road.
And that's because it's still considered to be a public way. So technically, if I wanted to go drive down through his yard right now, you're telling me I can do that and legally get away with it?
It's not their property.
But I'm asking, though,
Public
if I
the
decide to
public
drive
has
down
the
that
right,
road,
you have the right to pass over that.
I have the right to pass over that.
Yes. Is there a creative way that you know of for the town to make a decision? It'd be a logical decision, but make a creative decision to acquire that paper road, acquire that land, and then sell it?
No. I mean, I stand by town council
Yes.
wrote a letter stating that many people have the right to pass over that road. The town doesn't own it. The town can't purchase it, can't sell it. It's a street. It wasn't constructed, but it's still a street shown on a plan that was approved. The road has not been accepted by the town, but it still exists.
So that if I were a prospective buyer of the house, I would have to come back here, correct? Well, not if we issued a variance.
We have the right to issue the variance or deny the variance regardless. So,
Mr. Chairman, if I may? And I didn't want to interrupt Ms. Chacolo, but I'll tell you succinctly where I land on this. So there are two challenges for me. Notwithstanding the fact that I'm not resistant in any way to what these applicants are trying to accomplish. I actually have great empathy for the scenario that they find themselves in. But my concern is this. I spend a lot of time in my profession is a risk manager. I disagree that there's no risk here based on the brief that we were provided by town council. For the mere fact that what Caleb had just articulated, and that this in fact could be accessed and utilized by a variety of individual owners. And so that lack of ownership by the applicant is a concern for me from a risk perspective. Now, the likelihood of that, in my view, the likelihood of that becoming an issue, the likelihood of someone coming forward and trying to claim ownership or betterment or creating this paper road, I think is infinitesimally nil. But that's not, in my view, what we have to debate here, of whether or not something could happen. It's the fact that there's not ownership of this piece of property by this applicant. In addition, I fall back on granting a variance. I don't see, and I'm one that, as I walk through these conditions, I mean, I believe it's cumulative. I don't believe that it satisfies the first condition of being an issue with topography, excuse me. Why are we having such trouble with that word this evening? But because as I think thoughtfully Mr. Cussy had pointed out earlier, that this property was constructed with setbacks in mind, conforming to the setback at the time it was constructed. So I do appreciate what the applicant's trying to approach here. And again, I'll just underscore, I have great empathy for this, but I think that what we're trying to do is apply a practical rationale for what is a really litigious nightmare because they own a piece of property next to a paper road. And so I don't believe that I don't believe it passes the test for the first condition of granting a variance under those conditions. And I further substantiate my position by underscoring town council's advice. And I'm not taking it just because town council advised us, but just the nature of the fact that I do think there's a threat of risk. How likely that they would act upon that, I think it's minimal. But I think that there's a threat of risk, and within our responsibility, I think that we need to recognize that risk.
Mr. Chairman, if I might ask Mr. Moody another question. You and I live next to each other. You're an absentee owner, and I totally mow, maintain, fertilize, love 20 feet of your land, and I maintain it for 20 years. Okay? Isn't there a precedent set there that I can consider that my land?
I'll start by saying I'm not an attorney. But you may have rights to that land, but my rights would not go away to that land.
Your rights would not go away?
Go away. Just as if they put their driveway on this paper street, then he can go try and pass on that street. And if they're parking on it, then it becomes an issue.
Right, and that's part of the risk management.
And that's what Michael's talking about with the risk.
Right.
That's where, and that's what town council is trying to point
Yeah.
out, the risk. It's slim, but it does exist.
That's why casinos make millions of dollars, risk.
And insurance companies.
Yes, and that's what, and I'm, in a way, searching for logical reasoning here. All right, thank you.
Okay, anything else to add, Mr. Cussy? Okay, okay. I see the board is somewhat divided.
Mr. Chairman, it appears the applicant would like to speak again.
Yes.
And so I would, for one, based on the complexity of this, I'd be happy to reopen
Yep.
the public hearing.
Do I have a motion to reopen the public hearing?
Second.
Reopen?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
If you could approach the lectern again, please. There is a couple of questions I have as well.
So, it looks like it's not going our way. I guess I don't fully understand, you hear the words risk management. We're coming to the board to get a variance to be 10 feet from our property line rather than 20 feet from a sideline, which seems really reasonable in that there's nothing there for 40 feet. You talk about the pass and repass. I don't know if that's part of this process. You know, just getting approval, and that's what this board is for. And you know, Caleb denied our building permit because, and we hadn't thought of that it needs to be 20 feet from a road rather than 10 feet from a road. So he's following the procedures that need to be done. And we come here because that's the procedure you follow. And it seems, again, to me, so reasonable to say, okay, you can be 10 feet from the road. Discussion about pass and repass, to me, is a different issue and a different set of circumstances, and somebody else has control over that. So I guess what we're asking for is just to be 10 feet from a road that's not there. I brought up about the Ward Street is 16 feet wide. This paper road is 40 feet wide. If they put a road in there 16 feet wide, it would leave 12 feet on each side. That would be certainly far enough from the road. Then I would be 23 feet from the road. My addition would be. So I'm really overwhelmed by all this. You know, this is the second time back. We've done all of these things. I've tried to follow all the procedures, and I know you have some empathy for me, but you know, do we need to postpone this again and for me to get legal opinion to talk to the town lawyer about what needs to be done? Although I see this as a separate issue. 10 feet from the line is different than pass and repass.
So I think the applicant does bring up a reasonable argument in terms of 10 feet from the line versus pass and repass, but again, this is I know we all have different opinions on this. I see it as maybe that Mr. Chicolo brought up a very good point to determine if we can figure out, does the state own it? Does the town own it? Is there a private ownership? Does it dissolve at some point? Is it accessible to be purchased through a state program? I honestly don't know any of these answers, but it seems to me that preventing somebody from being able to pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, if you will, for the fact of a 105-year-old farm cart road, they would literally have to tear the whole neighborhood, not the whole neighborhood, but there would be a substantial restructuring here if someone was going to put that road in place. I recognize that if this is I kind of just see like we're splitting hairs on something that's 105, 115 years old, that the likelihood is slim and none.
If I may, through the chair. Just to try and explain to the applicant, I think what I'm interpreting some of the hang-ups from the board is they're failing to provide information as to how the shape or the soil conditions of their land prevents them from meeting that setback.
Right.
So I would agree with the applicant. We're kind of getting off track with the road. That's a separate issue. I think what I'm hearing Mr. Marin and Mr. Cussy say is they're failing to hear why the shape of their land or the topography of their land is preventing them from meeting that 20-foot setback. And that's the legal requirement that the board has to hear in order to grant that.
Right. And there is no opportunity for you to just shift this addition?
Well, that's why I presented all that information about where my property line is.
Mm-hmm.
It goes to probably 15 feet in front of the neighbor's house. So part of the topography or land structure or how the house is placed on the lot. I thought that was significant information. If you look at one of the pictures, I put a pin on his lawn. I took it out
Right.
because I don't want to leave my
So
pin
that's the
there.
one, that's the number 8, pin in neighbor's front yard and driveway at 15 Ward, is that the one you're referring to?
Yeah, I got two,
So it's the one, it's got the SUV in the background and it's got the
that's
pin right in
right,
the middle.
that's one of them.
So what are you telling me about that pin?
That's where my line is.
That's your property line
That's
right
my
there.
property line.
We can't add on that side, we have to add on,
My property line goes in the front of his house, and you talk about how people design some of these things. I think what happened is the people who live in that house owned that land and wanted to put a house on it and subdivide it. If you look at the
plan.
plot plan for his house, you see that it goes around like 10, 11 feet from his house, just so they could make enough land for the house that we have.
So
And
let
in
me,
fact, there's even an easement behind his house, if you look at that we own.
Mr. Chairman, if I might ask a question,
That-
petitioners. The picture you have with the 25.5 by 26-foot addition,
Yes.
okay, it's on the last page of
Yep.
what you gave us. Okay, the property line is, the property line is not the line of the paper road, correct?
Yes, when I say the property line, that's the line of the paper road.
That you are 13.2 and 11.8 from?
Yes.
The one that you drew. I don't think you have. I don't think you have that.
This is what?
can you pass that along so they can...
This is the paper road?
No, this is the road.
I don't think you have that. I think this is what they
So
want.
that,
So just for the folks at home, we have the tablet out.
so that the
Caleb
paper,
pulled up the
paper road
maps.
goes right through the addition, Caleb? This is the paper road.
The addition would be in the backside,
So,
13.2 feet away from the boundary that is the paper road, and 11.8 feet from the line on the front part of the addition, from the paper road.
so,
And the reason why it sticks out 12 feet from the house, the front of the house is 21.3 feet from that paper road, and the addition sticks out 12 feet because we need an entrance on that side, and there would be no place to put an entrance if you didn't stick the addition out. A lot of these things, we worked on this and worked on it and calculated and tried to move it around and put it in different places, and there wasn't a whole lot of
this is
flexibility
it right
in
here.
where to put it.
this is the paper road.
Yep. Additions here.
Right. So that would, if I flip this around, right, okay. And we want it 20 feet.
Where it says street in the front, that's Ward Street. And then,
No way you can put this addition flush with the house? 12 feet, move it back 12 feet?
well, then there would be no
There's
entrance
no entrance.
to get into
That would
that.
solve all problems, right there, I think, right? For you to go
Except that-
forward.
Right.
Except for the entrance.
To be
Yeah,
20
except for the
feet from the...
driveway they're proposing.
So if you
Then
take
you
a
can
look at the
put it-
screen, I just want to point out to you there that you can see that the lot line's there.
Yeah.
And one of the things where you notice is that their lot, is uniquely shaped to every other lot in that neighborhood.
Yes.
Also, if you look at where that paper road is in the back of the property, it suddenly stops at the neighbor's other end. So in effect, if I'm not mistaken, Caleb, would that be considered even a dead end?
Paper road stops.
It doesn't show that on the line, though.
Yeah,
Connects to Lexington.
I didn't see,
Yes,
when I
it
looked
connects
at
to
it
Lexington.
physically there, and another plot plan that they had first time they were here, I didn't see that the paper road stopped. Saw that it went all the way through to, that's,
Maybe I read it wrong, or maybe I saw it wrong, but it looks to me, I see a yellow dividing line there.
Through the chair, Ward Street and Lexington is connected by that paper street.
Right, okay, so, yeah, it is connected, okay.
you got,
Okay, I see, yeah, all right.
here it is right here, see? So your driveway would infringe on that?
My driveway would be partially on, but again, that's not what we're talking about here, right? We're not talking about,
The road.
Well,
If
I'm
you could just
thinking,
go to the microphone so that we could have that.
We have to make sure it's recorded properly.
Through the chair, could I ask the applicant why the separate entrance is necessary,
Absolutely.
the addition?
because it makes it all work. Without that separate entrance, you have to go through the front of the house, and the entrance in front of the house is stairs
no
going
entrance.
upstairs. So there's just enough for the door to open, and the stairs go upstairs to the second floor. So coming in that way to go to the addition really would be a really poor plan.
It makes no sense without a second addition, a second entryway.
Entryway.
Through the chair, could that entrance be moved to face Earl Street?
Well, you can't on the addition because there's going to be garage doors there. It drops off. So if you look at the addition that's facing Earl Street, there's 2 garage doors down there. So there's no way you can get into it that way. That's why we needed, I was planning, if you look at some of my pictures of the walkway, was going to come right along the side of the house into the addition.
So through the
Because then
chair,
it drops off to where the garage doors are down below. This is going to come in at the first floor level rather than the basement level. I did submit my plans, but we don't have those here.
this is, this whole thing.
so through the chair, I think what the applicant is stating is the grade of the lot prevents them from putting the entrance on the end, which would speak,
To the topography.
This is the area. Correct. And then we'll stay away from that paper road.
So I think what, one of the things we've talked about here this evening is that Caleb makes a good point. Mr. Giacolo and Mr. Cussy also have valid points, is that it's not that they don't necessarily agree or disagree in terms of the topography of the land or the impact of this project. It's that I think it needs to be more clearly articulated in your reasoning, that what Caleb just mentioned, so you said we can't put it on this side because it slopes down, or we can't do it this way because of the other circumstances. So I don't want to recommend another.
through the chair, if I may, I provided Ms. Bush with the plans that was in the original submittal of the addition. It shows the grade change from
Oh, yeah, okay.
the end to the front.
And there is a grade there,
Yeah.
significant grade, all the way down to the other street that it joins with.
So on the page Mr. Maron's looking at, it shows the garage doors, which would be facing towards the paper street, and then the stairway just to the right of that is facing towards the main road.
Yes, yeah. And those garage doors are facing the paper street?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
So you couldn't have an
But that-
entrance
that-
coming up that way, because you couldn't put stairs there because the garage doors are there.
We're going to try to shrink this down, Caleb. What we're concerned with, if they stayed away from the paper street, okay? What we would be concerned with would be 14 feet at one spot and 21 feet. So the 14-foot setback from that paper street is what doesn't conform to the 20-foot setback, because we're at 14 feet.
I believe the setback would be 11.1 at the front of the garage would be the smallest.
Because we're at 12 feet there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The back of the house is roughly 23 feet off the line.
I'm seeing something here that somebody's written in that says bench.
That's in the house.
What's that?
That's in the house.
Oh, in the house, okay. All right, so that the back of that addition is going to be approximately 11.3 or 12 feet, you said, from the
About
paper
13
street?
feet. The back of the addition's about 13 feet. The front of the addition's about 11 feet. A little more in both of those numbers.
This is the area we're concerned about right here?
11 feet here, 14 feet here.
Is,
This is the back of the addition.
and this is the paper,
This is the line.
for the paper street?
Yeah, and that's the
This is,
property line.
this is not street, paper street right here.
No, that's their property. This is the,
This is paper street. So if we consider the grade part of the topology, which you know how I feel about variances.
I know you do, yes.
Yeah, if I consider that grade part of the topology, as the door to open to the other conditions, we're at 14 feet here, you said, Caleb, right, in the back?
yes.
And 11 feet here, from here. So this is what we've got to be concerned with, along with the 11 feet. And then they haven't touched the paper road at all,
Yeah,
right?
the paper road is, the board has no authority over the paper road.
Right, but we haven't come anywhere near it then.
You're 11 feet and 14 feet.
Yes, we're 11 feet,
So you'd be granting 9 feet of
9 foot for a variance. And I know that we've opened that topology door in other cases, and I know every case has to stand on its own, okay? But then you're not touching in any way that paper road. And if everybody has a right, anybody has a right to drive over that paper road, could use that road. So they can use that road, or paper road. They have a right to drive over it.
They do.
Okay, so that if they have a right to drive over that paper road, then they certainly have a right to drive off of that paper road. Boy, I'm getting tongue-tied here. Drive off of that paper road into a garage.
They do. And-
So that what we need to be, if I can shrink this right down, what we need to be concerned with is a variance of approximately 9 feet. Okay?
Yes.
Help me out. Tell me you don't like it, or tell me you do like it.
I'll tell you, I don't have an opinion on it.
Oh,
But town councils,
did you just come from Washington?
town councils, they were concerned with when the driveway is constructed, Now you have a paved driveway on a paper street. There's a lot of people that can park their car in that paved driveway.
That's exactly right, and they have, they have to be aware of it, but maybe...
That doesn't have anything to do with the variance.
Right.
But that was
Right.
That was the risk that town council
So it is their risk that they assume.
or mine when someone calls to complain.
Maybe
because
if they decided to make it a crushed stone driveway so that people would not like to drive on it. But what we really, if we narrow the scope of everything, what we really need to be concerned with is 9 feet
Yeah,
of relief. We've got to give them relief of 9 feet.
the concern of the board is whether they've met the 3 requirements of a variance.
Right.
Yeah.
To gain that 9 feet.
I think the paper road muddled the situation from the beginning, but yeah.
It certainly
We're
gets-
talking about 9 feet.
It certainly
3
did.
away, right where we sit.
Yeah, we're talking about 9 feet of relief, and then the paper road doesn't come into play at all, because we're going to actually consider it a real road and say that we've got to give them 9 foot of relief from it, but this is 9 foot of a ghost.
No, that's a good way to put it, because it really is. It's,
And seeing it that way, I think you know which way I was tending to go.
of course.
And I think the petitioners know which way I was tending to go. But if we reduce it down to the variance from a ghost, okay,
So would-
I personally think that it could be doable.
So that, and I appreciate that. The difference I see here is that at some point in 1904, they laid out this road. There's probably several others through this neighborhood that we are not aware of as well. It was probably laid out in some sort of a pattern, I'm assuming. Or it meant that this farmer, or that, if it was a farm road in fact, they used it as a cart road to get from one field to the other perhaps. I don't really know. But at some point, they came in and they laid this neighborhood over and around those roads. So they said, well, then they're not too concerned about whether they should have attached those 2 roads at that point. Right? So they could, if they were so concerned about it, they would have used that as part of the new grid, so to speak, in my humble opinion.
I think they would have not built a couple of houses on the next street
And I think
down.
they're saying that, this person just applied and they got the 20-foot setback because they knew it was going to fit. The house wasn't too big for the lot, so they said, okay, we can put it here, and we can avoid what they're going through right now.
Yeah, what, the setbacks, one of the things that also should be considered is the requirements here in Auburn for these. You're also on the board of rewriting the bylaws as it is. Have those changed over the years?
Right, and the thing is, like, that's something that would actually not be able to do. I think we couldn't suddenly decide that we were going to eliminate paper roads. That's not what we can do.
No,
We're rewriting the bylaws, but I know what you mean.
I'm talking about just a setback. I mean, lot frontages have changed at times over the years.
Sure.
Okay, so setbacks may have changed, but I don't even think we need to go that far. That's something that somebody can pursue on their own.
Right.
Okay. I've said what I said. I'm okay with it.
Okay. Do we have any other questions or comments or concerns from the members of the board? Okay. So my question to the applicant is, seeing that if we move forward to a vote tonight, I'm not necessarily sure where it would go for you. Do you want to continue, or do you want to stand for a vote this evening? I really want to give you the option. That's just what I would recommend. I
I'd like to
want
be
you to choose.
approved. I don't know how much more I can work to try to change your mind?
I really not necessarily changing the mind as much as I think what the members of the board here are concerned with is not changing their mind so much is that having the appropriate wording and
What would we have to do? I mean, we've already had this big discussion. I mean, you know
This is
what
the front of the house now.
Trying to do?
we need to.
yeah, no, well, it's not even so much, I'm trying to determine what would make them satisfied in terms of their reduction of liability, granting a variance without the proper language to make them confident they could do that.
Again,
Where are we going to get,
we go back to the variance is just for the setback from a paper road.
Well, again, it seems like they're comfortable with not even discussing the paper road at this point, so.
I don't, Mr. Chairman, if, just an open discussion, I mean, I don't think it negates, I think Caleb's right, that we isolate this to what the variance is. I do concede that the grade could be considered meeting the first condition. I'm not willing to dismiss town council's advice on the fact that this could be a risk for the town. And I lean into that. I think that there may be an opportunity to re-examine, from my view, re-examine the conditions of the variance based on the thoughtful comments of Mr. Chacolo. But again, I don't think it takes away the risk. We can take the paper road, the ghost road out of the conversation, but it doesn't negate the risk of someone ultimately coming back, because those people exist, of asking the questions and making trouble not only for the applicant but for the town. I think the risk is low, but it's there, and I fall back on our responsibility to mitigate that risk.
Mr. Chairman, just to speak to what Mr. Maron just mentioned, there is a risk, but if each one of us right now, if there was a way that we parked our cars on the road, this paper road, wouldn't affect at all what's going to happen. This is the boundary of the paper road right here. Everything else is what they want to do, so that they take the risk of somebody parking on a road next to their land. Okay? Aside from that, it's what Mr. Maron is stating as the risk, okay, is your risk that what you drive down as a driveway may go away. If, to shrink everything down to the variance, okay, and that's not a small risk, okay, to have your driveway go away, because that's where you're putting your driveway, correct?
Partially. Not fully on the...
A portion.
As far as the house is concerned in this addition, we would be concerned with giving them 9 foot of relief.
Yeah, and Mr. Chacolo, through the chair, I mean, I have no concerns with their addition or granting a 9-foot relief based on the argument of the grade. I mean, I think it's a practical argument to approve. I think they run the risk at some point, and I think the risk is minimal. Let me just ask one final question, if I may. Caleb, so in the unlikely scenario that someone calls to gain access and use in front of what they're constructing, what's the response from inspectional services?
There's a lot of people that have rights to that they have the right to pass over that, and we could not stop them. The applicant has the right to pass over that. They have the right to improve that, and we could not stop them.
Thank you. But, Mr. Chairman, I think that Mr. Chacolo makes a compelling brief on where it stands for what we would offer relief for.
Okay.
The other thing is, do we note in the variance the risks that we see? No?
No, because I think we're only talking about the 9 feet at this point.
Yeah, that's
If we
all we're
mention
talking
anything about
about.
the paper road, then we open up that can of worms
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
So if the board was to grant relief on that, it would just be for the, as you had mentioned,
That 9
those
feet.
particular couple of measurements that taper, actually, right? It's from, 9 feet to 6, right? As it goes to 14 at some point? So it actually tapers from 9 feet to 6 feet.
No, the 9 feet is all we have to worry about.
Okay, so the 9 feet.
Through the chair, you are correct. The setback in the back would be 6 feet of relief in the back, 9 feet in the front.
Yeah, so that's what I mean, it tapers. It starts at 9 and goes down to 6. So we're talking about a triangle-shaped piece of land. How long would that be, in fact? So let's talk about that for a minute. So we're talking about 9 feet tapering to 6 feet. What is the length of that wedge, if you will?
25 to,
26 feet is the,
So we're talking about 9 feet, 6 feet, 20 what? 26 feet long. You're looking at realistically talking about the size of the area of the table we're sitting in right now. Right? From Mr. Cussy to Caleb to about where that monitor is in here. This is the room we're talking about. I could barely fit my pickup truck in what we're talking about for room that we're going to be granting relief on.
Mr. Chairman, with respect, I think not only just the size and the sliver, I think it's the intent to award the town against any risk
And I completely agree with you.
on somebody else
Sure.
claiming access to that piece of property.
And they can, but just because we granted them relief doesn't mean they can't gain access to that property. Because again, we're granting relief into a right-of-way, not necessarily if they decided to cut a road straight down through that. If the average road up there, as he had mentioned, is 16 feet wide, there's a 40-foot buffer. So logically speaking, we would put that road down the center of roughly, depending on the ease of construction. So you put a 16-foot wide road on a 40-foot piece of land, you still have buffer on either side that you're not even cutting into, that provides sewer access, access to put gas lines in, power, utilities.
Yeah.
Doesn't really, I mean, again, and we're looking at an area that would take you 4 passes on a lawnmower. That's all and again, I think that's my concern. I would not be happy as a homeowner if I said, because I have a 600 square foot patio that's actually bigger than this area, and it's not a lot.
Finish what you were saying, you would not be happy.
Well, I mean, if I was told that I couldn't put an addition on my house because of an imaginary situation that's only, it's only this big. It's literally this footprint of a pickup truck.
Getting by the topology of it, we've both driven by it, and around
I know,
it.
you always do your diligence. I absolutely respect that.
That would open a door for me to say, okay, let's move to the second condition, because they are, they all have to be satisfied.
Sure. So what would be the next condition that we would discuss?
It gives me, I don't, if there is no detriment to the town
There is not.
whatsoever.
That I can see.
Yeah, there is no detriment to the town, okay? Financial hardship is not a reason to supersede the topology, but there doesn't have to be financial hardship involved.
No, correct.
Okay? And as I said, there's no detriment to the town.
I don't think it derogates from the intent and purpose of the bylaw.
No,
The intent and
no.
purpose of the bylaw is to provide this
Purpose
board
of
the
the bylaw.
opportunity to grant relief or deny relief based on the interpretation of what we see in front of us.
That is, yeah, that's right. No, we have not
I don't want to annoy you.
abused, we have not abused the bylaw at all.
No, I don't think so. I think if anything, we're pretty good stewards of maintaining the integrity of the neighborhoods that we always talk about, you know? Okay.
I do not have 100% comfortable feeling regarding town council's exceptions, okay? I don't have 100% good feeling with that, but as long as that has been presented as right up on the table and we've hashed that out a good amount, okay, I'm comfortable with granting the relief of the variance.
Okay, I mean, I think we've probably discussed it as far as we can. I don't think we're going to sway each other's opinions or whatever that may be, or present the facts in a different way to see it in a different light. So, you know, with that being said, I think we still need to close the public portion of the hearing one more time, correct? Yes, sir? One more, add anything?
Be unanimous vote of the board?
No. Right, we do, it has to be a 4-to-1, though. Can't be a 3-to-2. Right, correct?
Through the chair, yes, it would have to be 4 votes in the affirmative. And just to reiterate, town council's comment on the setback was it needed to be met. If you don't meet it, you need a variance. There are mandatory findings for a variance. They made their argument about topology and the hardship. I don't think the paper street really comes into it, or the risk involved with the paper street. I don't think that can sway the board's opinion. I think the board has to decide whether they met the mandatory findings or they did not. Beyond that, it would open the board up to litigation, I believe.
Right, I agree. So being clear that we're literally discussing the measurements on the paper and nothing else to be considered during the decision. All right, so do I have a motion to close the public portion of the hearing once more?
Motion to close the public hearing.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. Do we need to go around one more time, or do we just want to see if there's a motion on the floor to either approve or deny?
I'll make a motion to grant the variance based on standard conditions.
Okay. Mr. Cussy?
I'll grant.
Okay.
Just got a second.
Through the chair, we just need a second on that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, I'm
You're
second.
right, I apologize. A second? Mr. Cussy will second, thank you. That's okay. Ms. Bush?
Grant.
And Vice Chair?
I'll grant.
Okay, grant it is. So it was a long, drawn-out discussion, but congratulations. I hope it goes well, and maybe you want to start working on those other things later down the road. I apologize for having to go through all this, but you can see where we try to get to the bottom of things. All right, good luck.
Yes, good luck. Oh, do we have? Yes, we do. We have an extension here?
Right, so we have an administrative piece we have to deal with. We have, and this is not a required hearing or anything, just a yay or a nay. So in other business, we have Seaboard Solar. They're requesting an extension of the special permits for the project on 476 Leicester Street. Do I have a motion to either grant or deny the grant of
Excuse me.
the extension of their special permits?
Through the chair, excuse me. So we're going to have to, there's 5 special permits because there's separate parcels, so we're going to have to do them one at a time.
Oh, okay, well, do you
I'll
want me to
help
read
you
them
out
off?
with the, do you want me to read them, or?
You can if you'd like, sure. Or I can do it, whichever.
Up to you.
Go ahead.
So the first one would be for an extension of the special permit located on Lot 1, Map 14, Parcel 3, Leicester Street, Auburn, Mass.
Do I have a motion to grant or deny based on what Kayla just read?
Make a motion to grant.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Second one is a request to extend the special permit for property located on Lot 2, Map 15, Parcel 3, Leicester Street, Auburn, Mass.
Motion to approve?
Motion to approve, grant.
Second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Third is to extend a special permit for property located Lot 3, Map 15, Parcel 1, Leicester Street, Auburn, Mass.
Do I have a motion,
Motion to approve.
second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Fourth, we have motion to extend special permit for Lot 4, Map 15, Parcel 2, Leicester Street, Auburn, Mass.
Motion to approve.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Last, we have motion to extend the special permit for property located Lot 5, Map 8, Parcel 10, Leicester Street, Auburn, Mass.
Motion to approve.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We have the minutes from 11/21/19. Oh, they're not present? Okay, I apologize. So we'll hold off on that until the next meeting. The next meeting is January 16th, by the way, and it will be in 2020. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor? Second?
Aye.
Aye, okay.